Good afternoon, everybody. For those of you who are not familiar with me, my name is Benjamin Penny. I am Professor of Chinese History and Religion here at the ANU in this building. But also, and more to the point, today I'm head of the ANU Taiwan Studies Program. Before we get into the main part of this afternoon, it's still a bit down. Was that okay? Yeah. A couple of notes that I'm obliged to make for workplace health and safety. If there's a fire, you'll hear an alarm, and the exits are, as you can see, on this side or out that side, and the gathering area is over that side of the building on the oval, so you'll get very wet under those circumstances. The second thing that I'll say is that this is being filmed. And so we would ask you to refrain from recording anything or taking photos. The lecture itself will be filmed, or the talks themselves this afternoon will be filmed, but the question and answer periods will not be. We do that because, of course, anything to do with Taiwan can be controversial, and we want people in the audience to feel able to speak, to ask questions, to make points without thinking that it's being recorded. Okay, that's the administrative part over. So to the important matters of this afternoon, and it is customary here, I would like to acknowledge the Ngunnawal and Ngambri peoples on whose land we meet. That land was never ceded and has been nurtured for tens of thousands of years by elders in the past and continues to be by people in the current day. So this is the second day of our Taiwan update for 2025 in Canberra. We were in New Zealand last week. And it's a particular pleasure this afternoon to welcome you here. The talks this afternoon, I've been able to hear them before, obviously, once, and they're fantastic. So I think you'll find them interesting, wide-ranging, informative, stimulating, challenging, bringing to the discussion a lot about Taiwan, which it was new to me, and I'm sure will be new to a lot of the people in the audience. I won't say any more. We've got separate people to chair each talk today, and it's my very great pleasure to ask our friend and colleague, Harry Gen, to introduce Alex Tan. Harry can introduce himself if he likes, and then Alex, and then we'll get underway. Thanks, Harry. Cool.
Okay, so, well, thanks very much, Ben, and it's my pleasure today to introduce Professor Alex Tan, who will be doing the first talk this afternoon. I won't go through his long and very distinguished CV, but just briefly, Alex is a Professor of Political Science and International Relations at the University of Canterbury, where he's also the Associate Director of the New Zealand Canterbury China Research Centre. He's recently been a visiting professor at Oxford University's School of Global and Area Studies, and he's also held visiting professorships at universities in the US, Japan, and Taiwan. Alex, as some of you may know, writes extensively on political parties, elections, political economy, Taiwan and Asian politics, and international relations in the Asia Pacific. I'd also recommend checking out, if you haven't, Alex hosts a podcast called Views from Down Under, which is well worth a listen. So I won't go on too long, but as you know, the title of Alex's talk today, I think, is What Does Taiwan's Two-Level Politics Tell Us? And I think it couldn't be a more topical or important subject, given what's been happening in Taiwan over the last year or two, and also, I think, unfortunately, in a number of what had seemed to many of us to be, long established and stable democracies elsewhere. So, please, Alex.
Thank you. Before I start, I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today. I also pay my respects to all the elders, past and present. Inga mana, inga reo, inga iwi, erau rang tarama, tena koto katoa, ko Alex tan toku ingoa. All peoples of the world, all speakers, all chiefly peoples here, all groups, greetings to you all. I'm Alex Tan. I would like to start out by thanking Ben, Nancy, and the team here at the ANU for making our visit really, really smooth. The weather was good until now, but I thought you guys are going to rain dance, but it's all good. We're all here. Thank you again for inviting me to be part of this Taiwan update. And it's been a pleasure to meet new friends, to renew acquaintances, and to meet other people and colleagues who are interested in Taiwan. Today, my talk actually is part of a paper that I originally presented at the University of Nottingham at the end of June in a conference that was organized, actually, interestingly, by Ginny, the wife of Ben's student.
That's right.
That's right, PhD student.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, small world. So the title of that conference was what can Taiwan teach the world? What can the world teach Taiwan? So this paper that I wrote, I titled it, the full title of this paper, which is going to be a book chapter next year. I call it A Canary in the Mine, What Taiwan's Two-Level Politics Tells Us, right? I'm gonna go really traditional low tech. No death by PowerPoint, okay? So if you don't listen, you miss it, right? Traditional lecture. All right, Taiwan's unique position in the international system, in my view, makes it a very crucial case study for understanding the evolving challenges to democracy in the 21st century. My paper contends that Taiwan serves as a canary in the mine, exhibiting trends that are increasingly relevant to established democracies worldwide. Taiwan's early experience with political polarization, which I have written a lot with a colleague, well before it actually became a widespread concern in other democracies, and its ongoing struggle to balance security concerns with democratic values in the face of external authoritarian pressure, highlight critical issues that resonate globally. The polarization of Taiwan's domestic politics has arguably created, in my view, a democratic ceiling, limiting further democratic development, a phenomenon that may be observed in other countries as well. By examining these dynamics, my paper aims to illuminate the challenges and vulnerabilities of democratic systems in the contemporary era. Taiwan's experience offers an early warning about the challenges facing democracies today. Taiwan is a vibrant democracy that exists in the shadow of a powerful authoritarian state, the People's Republic of China, which claims sovereignty over it. The precarious geopolitical situation has forced Taiwan to confront challenges that many other democracies are only beginning to grapple with, including the rise of political polarization, the manipulation of information, and the difficult balance between security and civil liberties. So my lecture today explores these challenges, examining how they have manifested in Taiwan and what lessons can be learned from Taiwan's experience, providing valuable insights into the resilience and fragility of democratic systems in the face of both internal and external pressure, and of considering the implications for the future of democracy globally. Political polarization, characterized by deep divisions between opposing political groups, has become a significant concern in many democracies around the world. However, Taiwan's experience with intense political polarization predates this global trend. In the early 2000s, Taiwan's political landscape was already marked by sharp divisions, primarily along the lines of national identity and relations with China. These divisions were more than ideological. They permeated social, cultural, and institutional realms, making reconciliation and political unity exceedingly difficult. Several historical and social factors contributed to this early polarization: the legacy of authoritarian rule, okay, and the transition to democracy in the late 20th century, creating lasting divisions within Taiwanese society. The KMT, with its emphasis on Chinese national identity, while the Democratic Progressive Party, the DPP, which emerged in response to authoritarianism, emphasized a Taiwanese identity distinct from China. This fundamental difference became a central axis of political competition. In the transition to democracy, unleashed pent-up demands for political participation and recognition of Taiwan's distinct identity and ethnic differences between those who arrived in Taiwan before 1949, and those who came with the KMT after the Civil War, further deepened these divides. The political landscapes thus became a battleground not just of party competition, but of identity assertion. The educational system, media landscape, civil society all reflect these divides. For example, textbook and curricula have been sources of contention as different political coalitions push for interpretations of history that align with their respective national narratives. This entrenchment of identity politics in institutional frameworks has reinforced polarization and limited the potential for consensus building. Taiwan's polarization emerged in the absence of widespread digital media and was rooted in more profound historical and geopolitical cleavages. This suggests that while digital platforms exacerbate polarization, they are not a necessary precondition for it. In Taiwan's case, the driving forces were deeply embedded in its historical trajectory and external threats. The country offers a valuable example of how identity politics, once institutionalized, can produce long-term polarization, even without the technological accelerants seen elsewhere. The early polarization of Taiwan's politics has had significant consequences for its political development. It has led to a highly competitive and often contentious political environment, with frequent legislative gridlock and difficulty in reaching consensus on important policy issues. Debates on national security, education, pension reform, and energy policy are frequently stalled by partisan conflict. This polarization has also contributed to a decline in public trust in political institutions and a rise in political cynicism. Citizens increasingly view institutions through partisan lens. Public discourse has become fragmented, with each side consuming media that reinforces the existing views, fostering echo chambers and further eroding the possibility of dialogue. Furthermore, early polarization has shaped the dynamics of Taiwan's democracy in profound ways. The dominance of the identity politics has at times overshadowed other important policy debates, such as economic development, environmental protection, and social inequality. The focus on cross-strait relations has limited the space for alternative voices, marginalizing those who do not align with the dominant narratives of either major party. Taiwan's early and persistent polarization is rooted in its transition from authoritarian rule to democracy, with identity politics at the core. Empirical data and political developments since the 2000s illustrate how these divisions have shaped both elite and mass behavior. A case in point is the adversarial dynamic between the KMT and the DPP. When either party secures a majority, it often seeks to rapidly advance its policy agenda, minimizing compromise and deepening partisan divides. The cycle of policy swings and reversals, rather than incremental consensus building, has become a hallmark of Taiwan's polarized democracy. Legislative gridlock and performative disruptions are also well documented. Minority parties frustrated by their inability to advance their agendas, frequently resort to dramatic tactics, such as seizing the speaker's podium or staging sit-ins, which are widely covered in the media, and reinforce the image of a combative, zero-sum culture. The proliferation of smaller political parties since the 1990s reflects both the satisfaction with the two major parties and an effort by ambitious politicians to carve out new spaces in a polarized system. Despite these divides, it is important to note that mass polarization in Taiwan is less pronounced than elite polarization. While politicians and activists often adopt "you live, I die" attitude, the general public is somewhat less polarized, though still influenced by partisan media and identity politics. This distinction suggests that institutional incentives and party strategies play a significant role in perpetuating polarization. Taiwan's unique geopolitical situation, facing the constant threat of military invasion from China, has forced it to confront difficult choices in balancing national security with the protection of civil liberties. The need to defend itself against a powerful authoritarian neighbor has led Taiwan to adopt measures that might be seen as impinging on democratic values. Taiwan's national security challenges are multifaceted. The PRC has never renounced the use of force to bring Taiwan under its control and has engaged in a variety of activities aimed at undermining Taiwan's democracy and sovereignty. These include military exercises near Taiwan's airspace, cyber attacks on government and infrastructure, disinformation campaigns during election, economic coercion targeting Taiwan's industries and allies. In response to these threats, Taiwan has taken steps to strengthen its defense capabilities and enhance its security measures. These measures include increased military spending, closer security cooperation with the US and Japan, and the adoption of laws and policies aimed at countering Chinese influence operations. For example, Taiwan's Anti-Infiltration Act, passed in 2020 to curb foreign interference. But critics argue it may also be used to suppress dissent and limit legitimate political activity. Within Taiwan, there's an ongoing vibrant debate about the appropriate balance between security and freedom. Some argue that the existential threat posed by China necessitates a strong security apparatus, even if it comes at a cost of some individual liberties. Others argue that protecting democratic values and civil liberties is essential to maintaining Taiwan's identity and way of life, cautioning against adopting authoritarian practices in the name of security and warning that such measures could ultimately erode the very democracy they seek to defend. Civil society organizations, human rights advocates, and academics have raised concerns about overreach and the lack of transparency in some of government's security measures. Taiwan's dilemma is not unique, though. Many democracies face similar challenges in balancing security concerns with civil liberties, particularly in the context of counterterrorism, immigration control, cybersecurity. However, Taiwan's situation is arguably more acute due to the direct and immediate threat it faces from a powerful authoritarian neighbor, making the trade-offs more urgent and the consequences more profound. Technology and disinformation play a significant role in shaping the security versus privacy debate in Taiwan. The PRC has used a variety of technological tools, including social media, cyber attacks, artificial intelligence, to spread disinformation and interfere in Taiwan's political process. These campaigns aim to sow discord, undermine public trust, and influence election outcomes. In response, Taiwan has become a global leader in digital defense and counter disinformation strategies. Educational campaigns promote media literacy, and partnerships with tech platforms aim to limit the spread of harmful content. However, these initiatives are also raise concerns about censorship, freedom of expression, and the potential for abuse. Taiwan's proactive stance in this domain is a double-edged sword. While it offers valuable innovations in defending democratic integrity, it also underscores the delicate balance between necessary intervention and overreach. The concept of democratic ceiling refers to the situation when cyclical endemic barriers prevent further democratic progress in certain areas, even as the democracy matures and may even improve in other areas, imposing a ceiling to overall democratic quality. Democratic development can be hindered by persistent and structural challenges, such as the political polarization, institutional gridlock, and weakened civic engagement. In Taiwan, it is argued that the early and persistent polarization of its politics has created such a ceiling, limiting the country's ability to move beyond electoral democracy and strengthen its democratic institutions more deeply. The ceiling is not a regression into authoritarianism, but rather a stagnation that prevents the deepening of democratic norms, accountability, and inclusiveness. A democratic ceiling occurs when the foundational conditions necessary for democratic progress become eroded or remain underdeveloped. This can manifest in entrenched political partisanship, declining institutional trust, policy paralysis, weakened rule of law, and reduced public engagement. Taiwan's experience illustrates how a vibrant and competitive democracy can nonetheless struggle to advance meaningful reforms due to deeply rooted partisan conflict and societal divisions. This condition challenges the assumption that once democracy is established, it will automatically evolve towards stronger institution and greater inclusivity. In Taiwan's case, democratic institutions like elections and a free pass are robust, but the qualitative aspects of democracy, such as participatory governance, civic trust, and rule of law, are inhibited by systemic polarization and identity-based cleavages. So if you're interested in how I view democracy, I actually, shameless plug, I actually have a TED talk on democracy. And in that talk, I said that democracy is not a final destination. Democracy is a journey that we take, right? So if you do not water it, if you do not fertilize it, it will die, right? So don't pat ourselves in the back too early, right? It's a continuing journey and a continuing experiment. Political polarization contributes significantly to the democratic ceiling by obstructing the policy-making process and fragmenting public consensus. Legislative gridlock has become a recurring problem, with opposition parties frequently resorting to boycotts or procedural maneuvers to block the government's agenda. The persistent conflict undermines confidence in the legislature and reduces the public's belief in the efficacy of democratic governance. Additionally, polarization fosters a hyper-partisan and media environment where news outlets cater to ideologically homogeneous audiences. This results in echo chambers and the erosion of a shared factual basis for national debates. When citizens no longer agree on basic facts or frameworks for discussion, democratic deliberation becomes nearly impossible. Consequently, this hinders the development of effective public policy, especially on issues requiring long-term consensus, such as climate change, social welfare reform, judicial independence. Taiwan's situation is further complicated by the geopolitical pressures it faces. National security concerns often dominate the political discourse, reducing space for alternative debates and making bipartisan cooperation even more difficult. The continual need to affirm sovereignty and resist external threats shifts attention away from democratic consolidation and internal reform. Empirical evidence supports the idea that Taiwan has reached a democratic ceiling. Surveys by organizations, by my colleagues at the National Taiwan University, Asian Barometer, have indicated stagnating or even declining public satisfaction with democratic governance. Although voter turnout remains relatively high, citizens expressed frustration with the perceived inefficiency and unresponsiveness of political institutions. Corruption scandals, while not endemic, periodically shake public confidence and reinforce the perception that political elites are self-serving. Efforts to reform campaign financing, expand participatory mechanisms, and enhance judicial transparency often stall due to political infighting. Civil society remains active, but is frequently excluded from formal policy-making processes. These indicators suggest that while democracy in Taiwan remains resilient, its evolution is constrained by deep-rooted political and structural barriers. While the concept of a democratic ceiling is not unique to Taiwan, the specific factors contributing to it are shaped by Taiwan's unique history and geopolitical context. Unlike some established Western democracies, where economic inequality or declining social capital drive democratic stagnation, Taiwan's ceiling stems from its polarized identity politics and the existential threat from China. This makes Taiwan a particularly instructive case for scholars and policymakers interested in understanding how external threats can exacerbate internal democratic challenges. It also shows that democratic ceilings can manifest in diverse contexts shaped by local histories and external pressures. The concept of a democratic ceiling in Taiwan is supported by both qualitative observation and quantitative data. Despite competitive elections and a vibrant civil society, Taiwan's democracy faces persistent obstacles to further deepening. One manifestation of the democratic ceiling is the recurring legislative deadlock and the inability to achieve bipartisan consensus on major reforms. For example, attempts to reform pension systems, energy policy, judicial transparency have repeatedly stalled due to partisan conflict. The frequent use of recall initiatives enabled by constitutional provisions, allowing the removal of directly elected legislators, reflects both a mechanism for democratic accountability and a symptom of institutional dysfunction. As recalls are often driven by partisan or factional interests rather than broad-based public dissatisfaction. Recent public opinion data underscores these challenges. The July 2024 Taiwan Public Opinion Foundation poll found that while President Lai maintained a majority approval rating, confidence in the independence of the Constitutional Court was low, and only about half of the respondents expressed trust in various state institutions. These figures suggest disconnect between electoral participation and institutional legitimacy, a hallmark of the democratic ceiling phenomenon. Civil society remains active in Taiwan, as illustrated by the coalition of NGOs that launched recall initiative against legislators perceived as abusing parliamentary procedures or aligning too closely with China. However, the frequency of such campaigns also point to frustration with the formal political process and the limitations of representative democracy in addressing contentious issues. Taiwan's politics are shaped by a complex two-level game, where domestic divisions and external pressures from China interact in paradoxical ways. In a book that I wrote with my colleague Howard Clark, we note that China's aggressiveness paradoxically strengthens Taiwanese resistance while simultaneously deepening internal divisions over how best to respond. For instance, while the DPP emphasizes sovereignty and self-defense, the KMT often advocates engagement and economic ties with China, reflecting divergent views on identity and security. This dynamic creates a series of paradoxes. China's threats can unite Taiwanese society in moments of crises, as seen during the COVID-19 pandemic, or following military provocations. But over time, persistent external pressure can exacerbate partisan divides and complicate consensus building on national security policy. The result is a political environment where short-term unity gives way to long-term fragmentation, limiting Taiwan's ability to present a united front internationally. Taiwan's experience offers several important lessons for other democracies. The emergence of deep polarization in Taiwan before the widespread adoption of digital media demonstrates that such divisions can arise from historical and identity-based cleavages, not just technological change. External threats, such as those posed by the PRC, can intensify internal divisions and complicate democratic governance as different factions adopt divergent strategies in response to external pressures. The ongoing dilemma of balancing security needs with the protection of civil liberties is not unique to Taiwan, but the immediacy and severity of the threat it faces make the trade-offs more pronounced and the debates more urgent. Taiwan's experience also illustrates that structural and contextual barriers, such as entrenched partisanship, institutional gridlock, identity-based polarization, can stall democratic development, even in vibrant and competitive democracies. For policymakers and scholars, Taiwan's case highlights the importance of strengthening oversight and accountability mechanisms to ensure that security measures do not erode democratic values. Long-term investment in civic education and media literacy is essential to fostering a shared sense of citizenship and critical thinking, which are necessary to counteract polarization and disinformation. Inclusive governance that incorporates diverse voices in policymaking can help bridge divides and enhance democratic legitimacy. Finally, international collaboration among democracies facing similar challenges is crucial for sharing best practices in countering disinformation, defending civil liberties, and managing security threats. In conclusion, Taiwan's democratic journey offers a unique and urgent perspective on the resilience and vulnerabilities of democratic systems in the 21st century. As a democracy under constant threat from an external authoritarian power, Taiwan has confronted challenges such as political polarization, disinformation, and the security-freedom trade-off sooner and more intensely than many other nations. These pressures have tested the limits of Taiwan's democratic institutions and societal cohesion, illustrating how even mature democracies can face significant headwinds when historical, geopolitical, and technological factors converge. So in this paper, lecture today, I've argued that Taiwan functions as a canary in the mine for a global democracy, not just because its experience is exceptional, but because it anticipates the problems other democracies are now just beginning to confront. Thank you.